You know, rules certainly are a necessary part of life. However, sometimes we can lose perspective with too much focus on rules and not enough on the relationships around us. Joining us from Charlotte, North Carolina to discuss this and more is David Hoffman. He is a former economist and is now one of America's top realtors, and as of a week ago has authored the book Relationships Over Rules: 7 Principles to Lead Gracefully and Love Generously. David, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you for having me.
So David, can you tell us the meaning behind the title of your book and what sparked you to write Relationships Over Rules?
Absolutely. So the rules of the world always tell you what's not possible. If you're new to a town, you can't reach your true potential in your business. You can't reach your dreams. If you came from abuse, you're going to abuse. If you came from neglect, you're going to neglect. If your parents were divorced, you're going to be divorced. Um, you can't do what someone else has never done before. The rules tell you that your past is who you are. But with the relationships in your life, starting with God in the center, you can overrule those rules. God helps to empower you with the people He puts in your life to reach any possibilities. And so for me, I found that the adversity I faced as a child, the world says that's all you're going to be and that your past is who you are. But I have found that that adversity has actually given me perspective to be grateful for so much that God is doing in my life. And because I never had relationships, I really value them. And that is, your past does not dictate your purpose any more than it defines your potential in life. And so, yeah, there's so many rules for all of us that the world say you can't do this. This is impossible. You know, Philippians 4:13 says, "I can do all things through God who strengthens me." It doesn't mean that I can. It doesn't mean I can slam dunk a basketball. But what it does mean is that with God in the center and the relationships that He puts in your life, you can reach your true potential and the purpose He has for you. The rules say that when the transaction's over, to move on to the next. But with a real relationship, the relationship begins when the transaction ends. Hope this makes sense.
Now, you had a difficult childhood, including your father separating you from your loving but physically disabled mother. How did she exemplify a godly attitude despite her challenges?
Absolutely. And I didn't find God until I was almost 30 years old. But my mother had multiple sclerosis. And so when she delivered me, she was warned that if she delivered me, she may die, or she may be paralyzed. And sure enough, she became a paraplegic. And so when I was 2 years old, my father took me away. And so I had a challenging childhood like many. But when I would visit my mom 4 or 5 times a year, she was always full of life, so positive, never complained once. To the day she died, she never complained once. My one regret in life is I was 23 and I was on the phone with my mom. She was in New York City, I was in DC. And like any mom, she seemed really proud of me. But because of my childhood, I was very self righteous for many years. I was very selfish. And so I told my mom I was going to visit her. 2 weeks later, she passed away. Now, I won't know until I get to heaven if she knew how sick she was and didn't want me to worry, or if she didn't know. But my one regret in life is not being able to say goodbye to my mom, because she always exemplified everything that is good in this world. She's such a great example of the God that I serve. She was always happy. On the phone, she was happy. When I would visit her 4 or 5 times a year, if she was here today, she would look like you or me. You sitting behind that desk, the aide would put her in a chair and she had a big smile. She didn't show being the woman who lost her health. She didn't show as the mom whose only child was taken away from her. As a father of 3 kids now, I can never imagine the strife in my mom's life, but she never showed it to me. She always just had positivity. And for me, that has given me that perspective that came from adversity, has given me a lot of gratitude. And I think that came from my mom. She faced immeasurable adversity, but I think she had perspective that at least she had a little boy and that I was being provided for. Now, I didn't tell her about some of the strife in my own life. I didn't want her to worry, but I did want to spend as much time with her as possible as any little boy would want to.
Now, why do you believe your childhood challenges gave you the determination to never give up, and put other people first?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, as a little boy, I would I had a work ethic that came from wanting to make some money to buy myself some food, and so I learned that at a young age. Because I had little, I was grateful for much, and I was grateful for anything. And so when you don't have a lot, that's when you have that unique perspective to be grateful for anything that is given to you. And so I learned that at a young age. But also, the only real relationship that I had was with my mom 4 or 5 times a year. My father was absent. The house just didn't feel like it had a lot of love, at least for me. Even some of my best friends one year, and I'm trick or treating, and they're throwing eggs in my house because it wasn't cool to be my friend because I was the weird kid. I'd spent a lot of time in my room. I didn't have a lot of authentic relationships, so I craved them. I always craved that opportunity to show someone that I could be their friend. I wanted that love, and I wanted to give more than I take with that love. And so a lot of times people will ask me, where did all these relationships come from? Where did this passion for relationships come from? And the answer is not having it. And so my mom gave me all the positivity and examples of how to love someone unconditionally, and the lack of relationships gave me the perspective to be grateful for any relationship that was put in my life.
I relate to what you said so much because I had a similar childhood where I didn't have those authentic relationships with friends, and I even recall like my house being egged in on Halloween one year. But moving on, your wife also endured childhood trauma, and together you suffered 2 miscarriages. How were you able to rely on God and heal your wounds and not lose hope?
Yeah, absolutely. So my oldest son is a honeymoon baby, and my younger son came after those two little girls that didn't make it here on Earth. And we thought we had lost him too, but God said, no, he's here. And so we never gave up hope. Actually, just yesterday, we took custody of a precious little girl named Isabella, who was almost 10 years old. That's another but God story. My pastor always reminds me it takes more faith to not believe. And so, yeah, when my wife, had her own physical challenges too, but she never gave up hope. We never gave up hope with our challenges with delivering, and we just stayed focused on God. He provides. He provides. In my conference room, we have Jeremiah 29:11 up and down the conference room wall. So when a client asks, I'm in real estate, when they ask, should I do this deal or that deal? Should I buy? Should I sell? Should I hold on tight? How do I make more money? We point to Jeremiah 29:11 because he has a plan he knows for us to prosper and not be harmed. And when you stay fixated on him, when you don't focus outside of God in the center, he provides on his time.
Now, you write that adversity can create gratitude. Can you share how you learned this lesson and how Joseph's life was an example of this?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, Joseph, Paul too. To be honest, I've become a real big fan of Paul in my older years, because I think about, you know, what is harder than living in a prison. But when you have God, you can overcome anything. When it goes back to the adversity, I've got two boys and now a precious little girl who's actually my oldest, and I didn't know her 3 months ago. My biggest focus on them, not fear, but focus is, and my wife's the same, is to ensure that they have gratitude for them to have everything we didn't have, but also for them to not be entitled. And so for me, having adversity, having little, not much time with my mom, not a lot of friends and relationships, not unlimited food and access to a lot of the things that most of my friends had every day living in middle class America. I had a unique perspective from my bedroom where I spent most of my time of whatever I got was a lot, even very little. And so I just became very grateful. Now I didn't find God until I was almost 30 because I blamed him for so much loss and strife in my life, but I was grateful for the little I did have.
And I think Paul is a really good example of gratitude as well. He was imprisoned, yet he still wrote 2/3 of what is now the New Testament. What are some of the 7 principles you offer to create authentic relationships, both personally and professionally?
Absolutely. Growing up, I was heard no all the time. I could say, is my name David? No. Can I turn the light on? No. Can I go downstairs? No. Can I do this? No. What about this idea? No. And so now my goal is to find the yes, but find the right yes. You don't want to be a people pleaser. You want to be a God pleaser. Um, but you can find the yes. Maybe we can't go to Disney World next week, but we can go next year. Maybe we can't give you the raise today, but let's look at the next 3 months. Maybe you can't stay up late tonight because you have school in the morning, but next week. Find a way to say yes. People have dreams, people have purpose, and they have a huge potential. God has big plans for everyone, but the world brings people down, and most people don't realize their true potential. They don't realize their purpose. So one of the principles is to find a way to say yes, and the right yes. Another one is, I've got three guiding principles that God put on my heart when I moved to Charlotte in 2005. When I didn't even know him, I thought it was all me. I was very self-righteous in 2005. I thought it was all me. Be the friend, be the expert, be present. But most importantly, be the friend. Be the friend first. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So once you're the friend, then you can focus on being the expert, always being present like you are right now.
People don't care what they know until they know what you care. I totally agree with that. And many don't believe in mixing business with friendship, but you have found benefits in doing so. So tell us about that.
Absolutely. I always joke every woman wants to marry their best friend. But for any guy who had that young lady in high school or college that they were smitten by, but they were always in the friend category, maybe that young lady didn't see you as expert husband material, or maybe she didn't think you're being present and you're too distracted, showing up late, leaving early, looking at other ladies, or being distracted with sports and other hobbies. The financial advisor, you want him or her to be your best friend. You want your realtor to be your best friend. You want the neighbor to be your best friend. People want to work with their best friend, but they don't know if you have time for them. They don't know if you can be present in their lives. They don't know if you're the expert. And so I always encourage people that no matter what walk of life you're in the marketplace, in your marriage, in a new relationship, when you just start dating, starting a new business, in the church, people want to work with their best friend because they can trust you as a friend. They know how much you care. They know you care. But they don't know if you have time for them. Maybe you're too busy, and they don't know that you're the expert. And so when someone doesn't pick you, it's usually, and I'm looking in a mirror when I talk through a window lens with you, it's, David, we decided a long time ago we don't want to mix business and personal. It didn't work out last time. And that's not a referendum on me or them. It's on, we're not sure you have time for us, or we're not sure you're the expert in the field. And so you have to show them you're the friend, but then when they reciprocate, you have to show them that you are present, you have enough time for them. A lot of people in the marketplace and in business, they create busy work to seem successful. But what happens is their friends go away. They go dark because they think you don't have time for them. Or you start a new field, and on day one, you go through your Rolodex and you call everyone you know, and you're like, hey, I just got my real estate license last week. I just got into politics last Tuesday. Pick me, hire me. And they're like, hey, I love you as a friend, but if this doesn't work out, we're going to lose our friendship. And the big if is because deep down, they're not sure if you have time for them, or they're not sure that you're the expert. But if they know you have time for them, if they know you're the expert in your field, and they know how much you care first and foremost, then who doesn't want to marry the best friend? Who doesn't want their financial advisor to be the best friend? Who doesn't want their school board member to be their best friend? They want to be close to their best friend. They just don't know if you have time for them. They don't know if you're a priority, and they don't know if you're the expert or if you're faking it till you make it. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. So now you're the founder of a successful real estate company. Why is it important to prioritize the needs of others? And how do we determine when a win for the other person, not ourselves, is best?
Yeah, absolutely. The goal is to love unconditionally and to give grace like Jesus. Now, none of us are perfect, only one. But when you give more than you take, you're making a difference. I'll never forget, I was speaking at a real estate conference in Maryland about 6 years ago. And after the talk, we did a Q&A, and a gentleman raised his hand and he asked a great question. I was probably taken aback for a moment or two, but then I really appreciated it afterwards, and he came up and we had a great dialogue. He said, David, this sounds nice, maybe a little airy fairy, definitely warm and fuzzy. But what happens if you just help a lot of people, but no one ever picks you to buy or sell a home? And that could be for any walk of life, whatever your business is, whatever your marketplace is. And I said, that's a great question. If I never help someone buy or sell a home, and I just help a lot of people, well, then you know what, that was God's plan for me. And that's even a better option than just selling a home or buying a home or making a quick buck. God had bigger plans. He came up after the talk and he said, thank you. And I said, why? He's like, you just allowed me to drop my guard. I was chasing the next deal. I was building real relationships, but as soon as I got paid, as soon as I took that address off the whiteboard, it was next. It was next. It was next in my dating. I never went deeper. I never focused on the covenant of a marriage. It was always next on Tinder. It was always next online. I was always seeking out next. But the transaction ends and then the relationship begins. That's not when the relationship ends. It doesn't start until the transaction ends. A real relationship is when you give without needing to receive.
Completely agreed. Now, that was David Hoffman. He's the author of Relationships Over Rules, 7 Principles to Lead Gracefully and Love Generously. David, thanks you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.